You're listening to Actors with Issues with Juan Ayala, a podcast of actors, by actors, and for actors. Joining us today is Frankie Loyal from FX's Mayans, now in its final season. Frankie Loyal, welcome to Actors with Issues. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you.
So before we dive into Mayans, which I'm very excited to chat about, I've been such a fan of the show since day one. I've reviewed it many times, spoken with many of your co-stars. But let's go back a bit. So how did you first get started in acting? When did that journey start for you?
In San Francisco, early 90s. I was walking down the street. I lived in the Haight-Ashbury district, pretty popular neighborhood, but I was just walking down the street and there was a talent scout that was looking for tattooed guys for a TV show. Mm-hmm. And when he was talking to me, I thought he was propositioning me to do porn or something. I mean, I'm being honest. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And my friends were like, no, there's a TV show that they're filming in San Francisco and they're looking for, tattoo types or whatever. So it was kind of a dare. I went down for the audition and I booked it. Mm-hmm. That was a TV show called Nash Bridges, Don Johnson, and Cheech Marin.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got a couple commercials and it wasn't the hugest, spike in acting for me, but got to eventually do a little film with Tilda Swinton where I got to meet her and she was absolute greatness. And I just had this little journey of films because it seemed like if they had guys that were tattooed or whatever, they put that stuff on. It really wasn't the norm back then for actors. So that was something I felt kind of worked against me because I wanted to work, but at the time it was a little taboo.
And, with how long Mayans has been running, 5 seasons, shows don't really run for that long these days, with the popularity of limited series or of just shorter runs in general. And shows have just gotten so expensive to make these days and whatnot. So, being on the show for as long as you have, what would you say has been like the biggest change or growth within you since day one on your first episode compared to how you are today?
I've said it recently. I think I'm still going through that process of recollection and self-realization. I think it's one of those reflections I have where I look back going, we really, as a team, as a collective, we went through so many forms of opposition from the beginning to the end, and you went to strike and what have you. And, personally, I was like, oh, we hung in there through all this. We had family members who died. We, had just life happens and you're focused on doing a show. And I think it was, no matter how tough things get, I always know that, hey, you got to keep moving and you got to pick up your bootstraps and go. And it was just, I've never been one to quit, but it was one of those things where you have a machine this huge, you're just like, you see what you're made of and you don't realize it's happening probably till after the fact. And I think that's something that, and I'll never doubt myself again as far as what I can bring to something. That was a huge realization too.
With the folks that we've talked to from the show, we've had Amelia Rivera on the show, Danny Pino. We just earlier today spoke with Carla Barada, and just sort of the collective of and what the show's about, and fans know this. It is about brotherhood and family and loyalty, and like you said, sort of that mentality of picking yourself up, by the bootstraps. And so many shows, the last couple of years have gone through so much, like you said, with COVID. Now there's a strike and shows are just going through it a lot. The industry, the country, the world is just going through a lot right now. And that this story of perseverance, of fighting, of sacrifice has been so awesome to see. And seeing this level of representation, for the Latino community has been so awesome, because it's rare. Sadly, it's still rare these days to see a full Latin cast in a show. So what has it been like for you to be part of a show like this?
Well, you just mentioned three of some of my favorite people. Off camera, they are just as much family as, I didn't work directly with Danny and Carlos so much on the show, within the scenes, but Emilio, they're just family, literally. And they've been there for me through some crazy times, but vice versa. Being part of something like that, having that family element, because I really don't feel I had that growing up, not the way I wanted, so to speak. I think that laid segue to an artistic uh, path where you could kind of just fall into it. You knew that the people you were with were your allies, as well as your family, as well as your peers, colleagues, whatever you want to call them, and that kind of just made it possible. Meaning that I can do whatever it is I need to do, and to learn from them also. Danny, Emilio, and there are also people that not just mentored you about TV, film, what have you. It was also personal things. You look at their growth, and it's definitely inspiring. So that was also something huge. That was a total wonderful bonus, I guess.
And with the name of our podcast being Actors with Issues, we like to sort of shed light on some things for any young actors who are watching or listening, who
Right.
are looking for a little bit of guidance or career advice. So, for you, what would you say is a career obstacle that comes to mind that you could shed some light on for our audience?
I mean, that's a tough one because the only obstacle I think that we ever really have is ourselves.
Hmm.
There's always going to be somebody that doesn't think you're the right fit for a role, or the right piece to fit in the puzzle that they're looking for their artistic vision. But I think it's just an acknowledgement of, hey, maybe I'm not the right fit for this, or maybe I am and I need to fight harder for it. I just think it comes down to trusting yourself, trusting
Hmm.
your work, trusting your process, and knowing that when you're doing the work, and it's something that for me as an actor, I can say has never failed me, is I put my work in such a way that it has never let me down. May have had relationships not work out. I may have had things that have broken my heart in life. But when I think about, I can always go to my work, and my work keeps me grounded. Through that darkness, the work has led me to the light. Some of the people who come into my life, some of the opportunities I've had, all come down to the work. And if anybody knows me, I'm the one guy that I'm not really big on the spotlight stuff. That's just not me. Um, but when it comes to the work, give me 800 hours of it, and that is my driving force. And I always tell people that just make it about the work. Just be true. Yeah.
And I'm curious, with how long you've been in the industry, what would you say is the biggest change that the entertainment industry, or maybe what it takes to be an actor, has taken place since you first got started?
Well, I noticed as far as Latinos go, there was just few that I remember starting out.
Mm.
And like I said, you would always see guys that you were probably good for a role. You could fit the description, and they would bring other guys in that weren't, and they kind of change their aesthetic. They put fake tattoos on them. They would give them suntans or darken them out, and
Yeah.
it was interesting to me that you would see that. And I know through time, there's been a change. There's a little more diversity with everybody. There's an acceptance of everybody, whether it's gender, ethnicity, culture, just anything that differed from, I guess, what people were normally used to seeing the status quo of television or film or art. There's just a bigger change with that, which I think is great because, like I said, I'm an old punk rock kid, so I always felt like I was on the fringes of the norm anyway. So to see certain things, come to fruition over time, I'm glad that I'm part of an industry where I get to see things change and have the opportunity to see people in their own doing their own thing, growing and telling their stories the way they need to. I think that's epic.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very great um, sort of progression. Like growing up, I just had, shows like the George Lopez show, Diana, and the Brothers Garcia. Those are kind of like the three shows where I saw Latin families. And now it's like you've got shows like, I mean, some of the shows aren't around anymore, but shows like One Day at a Time, and um the Lopez versus Lopez, because George is back on TV, and shows like Mayans. And it's just been so great to see how much that has improved and how much more opportunity there is for our community. It's been so awesome to see. And, again, congrats on such a great run on Mayans. Like, again, 5 seasons, 50 episodes. These are numbers that just you don't see that much anymore. So it's really awesome to see this show have been able to, survive a pandemic and showrunners and all of that, So again, congrats and thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
So much for having me. I appreciate you. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Juan Ayala. See you next time.